Center stations. Both of these sites have historically caused traffic safety issues and delays in the city. Both were identified in the 2016 regional plan by SANDAG, and most recently in the North County Comprehensive Multi-Corridor Plan by Caltrans and SANDAG jointly as priority grade separation projects. Grade separation projects at these locations will not only provide multimodal improvements, but also benefit first responder response times and improve traffic circulation. Next slide. The County of San Diego is undertaking its first priority, the Buena Creek Infrastructure Analysis and TOD Opportunity Study. This is a fully funded initiative that is anticipated to be completed at the end of this year. This is a top priority for the county to better understand opportunities for transit-oriented development and mobility improvements needed in this area. Once complete, the county's priorities will include implementation of the recommendations of the study, which could include active transportation improvements, roadway improvements, and inland rail trail connectivity improvements. The county's final project includes prioritization of the Buena Creek Grade Separation Project, a project which NCTD previously submitted a grant application to the Federal Rail Administration to their Grade Crossing Elimination Grant Program this past fall. This project would effectively eliminate 3 at-grade crossings, 1 pedestrian crossing at the Buena Creek Station and 2 roadway crossings, one of which is a key location for NCTD because it is a speed-constrained crossing due to the geometry of the intersection. NCTD and the county are currently discussing the potential for an MOU to continue progressing the portfolio of projects in this area. Next slide. In the city of San Marcos, they have identified 3 priority projects. Their top priority is a grade separation project at Pacific Street and Mission Road. I understand that the curve at Mission creates issues for the inland rail trail and Pacific Street, which this complicated crossing is very difficult for pedestrians and cyclists. The image depicted on the screen is an image of the current configuration of the at-grade crossing. In addition, the city is also seeking to implement advanced preemption technology. This technology would effectively allow rail signals and traffic signals to clear traffic from the intersection and reduce gate downtime. The final project is a landscaping and fencing project along East Mission Road near Rancheros Drive. Next slide. In the city of Escondido, they have focused on a project that is not necessarily in the city of Escondido, but it is a site that is key for circulation in the city. It's a grade separation project at Nordall Road. This project has a number of key benefits for multiple jurisdictions. Additionally, they have identified improvements to the Escondido Transit Center. In coordination with ongoing redevelopment of the Escondido Transit Center that NCTD is undertaking, this proposed project would include improvements to an at-grade bike and pedestrian crossings and bus facilities. The first phase would involve preparation of a study to show how improved access can best be accommodated, including microtransit, active transportation, and micromobility opportunities. The final project is related to a completed section of the Inland Rail Trail. This project includes active transportation improvements along Escondido to the Escondido Creek Trail as well, along the Sprinter right-of-way. Proposed improvements would include trail security, trees, water, bottle filling stations, trailhead improvements, enhanced fencing, bus shelters, wayfinding signage, trail amenities, and improved roadway crossing points. Next slide. And with that, those are the priorities that each of the cities along the Escondido sub have identified. I am available for any questions at this time.
Thank you so much for that presentation. And Suhail, do we have any public comments for this agenda item?
No, Madam Chair.
All right. At this time, we are ending the public registration to speak on this item. What about committee members? Do we have any questions? I'll start here with committee member Kelly Hinsey.
Thank you, Lillian. That was a really comprehensive overview. And it's really cool to learn about other cities' priorities and see how worthwhile these projects are. My question is just a kind of big overarching question. This discussion that we're embarking on to convene the cities and identify these priorities, and they're so neatly laid out here. And it seems like NCTD has a really good understanding about what they are. Is this the first effort to sort of regionally summarize and work together with all of these cities to advance these projects in such a comprehensive way?
I think there have been attempts in the past, but for sure, in response to the historic levels of funding, this is our first attempt to really wrap our arms around the projects that are most needed by the communities and try to identify ways that we can move forward toward implementation.
Any other?
So this doesn't mean necessarily that all of these cities are going to get all of these items. Is that correct?
No, what we're hoping to do is to look at opportunities for bundling, how we can submit grant applications, because what we've learned, and Mary Dover is here, and she's leading our grant application strategy, is that by looking at projects and putting them together in such a way that they provide multiple benefits, multiple jurisdictions, regional benefits, oftentimes projects are more successful in receiving grant funding.
Okay. And then my next question is, how is it going to be decided? And I hope it's not us up here. Which of these projects will move forward?
So I think this is a collaborative effort. Our executive director, Matthew Tucker, previously mentioned at a previous meeting that it also requires the cities to commit to working with us through MOUs so that we can define those working relationships and really identify those priorities. The cities oftentimes also need to take a first step at funding these initial efforts. And in many of these circumstances, the cities have completed environmental documentation, initial outreach, feasibility, but it is a collaborative effort, and identifying which of those projects are also moving forward at the city level will help NCTD as well to ensure that we're moving them forward here as well.
So I'm assuming that there'll be an NCTD committee, staff committee of some kind that will be putting all these pieces together to figure out which has the best chance of receiving the funds.
So
I'm not sure you answered what I
Okay.
asked.
So I think the best way to answer that is that we are working through this committee to further refine these projects, identify opportunities for bundling, seeking your support that that we need to continue working with these projects. To the extent that you need additional information about what these projects are, I'm happy to bring those things forward. But yes, I think at the staff level, we will be looking at opportunities to look at grants that are available and identify how we can present them moving forward. But we do need as well the cities to come forward and say, you know, we're ready to move forward with an MOU.
Okay, thank you.
Being the new one, you know, we always ask a lot of questions. This might be my one and done, and I won't see you for a couple more years. So as far as this list being compiled, what was the genesis of this? Was it staff from these cities, or was it an outreach program from you that these got bundled and then came to this committee? I'm trying to figure out what the source was.
Sure. So in July of last year, we identified that there was a need for NCTD to better understand what the needs of the communities are. We often get feedback from the public about quiet zones, trails, fencing, landscaping, parking. And so the initiative of this committee was to identify what are the top priorities in each of the cities. Because like all government agencies, there's only so many resources and only so much bandwidth. So it was determined at that time that the cities are in the best position to identify what their communities need. And so working group members were assigned at each of the cities and at the county to work collectively with me and other NCTD staff members to identify the priorities that we wanted to work together to progress, either as part of our portfolio or one at a time. So that's why this list of priorities is being put together.
And was that staff-based?
Yes.
Okay.
As well through collaboration, I think internally with the cities and the county. I don't want to say it was just staff.
Right. So the staff and others group this bundle together and then it's coming to this committee. And what are you asking for on this? Or is it just a presentation saying, this is our collaboration, this is what we're looking at, and it's just more a FYI for us?
Yes, I think it is a presentation to share what those priorities are. And then as we move forward through the next level of meetings, identify opportunities to be able to move these projects forward.
So as counsel, I don't want to speak out of turn, but Matt hasn't arrived yet to the meeting. And so I think for your benefit, this committee was put together to kind of identify, some community enhancements and so forth, as the name, suggests, that, would assist the communities with some of the issues that we keep hearing about, either from the cities themselves or from the public, and sort of pulling together a list of all of those things. In terms of action by this committee, it's not intended that this committee would take any action on these types of things. But the priority list and the grants that are available, and I think Mary Dover is here, she's going to be pulling together, these are the types of grants that are available out there that might fit some of these projects. And I think Matt had mentioned at the last meeting, and I really don't want to speak out of turn on his behalf, but my recollection is that he stated that we're pulling all of these together, see how they might fit in a bundling of projects. This will require the cities to come to the table, to participate in, grant applications, funding, that might be required and so forth. And that this would be presented to the full board for the full board's consideration at some point in the future. Hope that's
And-
helpful.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah,
Mary
love
Dover, Government
strength
Affairs
through
Officer.
numbers. Yeah,
Um,
strength through numbers. I'm a big fan of that.
And on the grants piece, so right, this is a list of projects and this will help inform us in our grant activity. And it can also help the cities in your grant activities. There are some grant programs that NCTD is actually not eligible to apply for. For example, the Department of Transportation has the Reconnecting Communities program. They specifically made it so that the owners of the transportation infrastructure cannot apply because they wanted it to be a collaboration with the cities. So the intention with that particular grant program is if there's a rail line that goes through your community, it's we will work with you on how you believe is the best way to mitigate that, whether it's an underpass, an overpass, raising the rail, raising the street, based off of what the city believes is the best option for that.
Any other questions? All right, it's my turn. This is awesome. I mean, this committee was put together because one, we have historically a huge amount of funding that we can tap into. I think, Mary, what you're speaking to is that some cities with some of this funding have to be the lead agency. So we have to take a leading role. And NCTD can back us up. And the more that we're able to connect these projects through a regional lens and really show that, hey, the inland rail trail and the retention basin and a grade separation at Vista Village and infrastructure at Buena Creek Station and a grade separation in San Marcos and a Nordal grade separation, all these help enhance the frequency, the reliability and the safety of this corridor for both those who are utilizing it on the Sprinter, those who are cycling and walking through it, and also our first responders, because we have to keep in mind too that in the hopefully the very near future, and I think we do have like $7 million that we received from Congressman Levin to do the 15-minute headways on the Sprinter. That's a huge jump. So, for us, most of us that don't have a grade separation on the Sprinter line, those little arms are going to be coming down every 15 minutes. And, I've been really active in just highlighting that could be a huge issue. Of course, we want, if we could get the Sprinter every 7 minutes, I would advocate for that. But on on some of these intersections that are really heavily used by our first responders, Nordal being one because Palomar Health is there, at the Vista Transit Center. One of our busiest fire stations is right on that corridor. So there's going to be a huge congestion issue where first responders aren't going to be able to go through. But if we can do grade separations, not only can we improve the circulation for our first responders, but we can do a safe crossing for pedestrians and cyclists, which would be kind of like the big picture, right? But it's so expensive that none of our cities could really do this on their own. I mean, I think my city would have to triple its cannabis revenue to try to be able to pay for all this. But so this is really great that we're trying to take this regional approach. And I do want to speak to some of the items. So in Oceanside, the Inland Rail Trail, I had a really good discussion with Caltrans District 11 folks. And this, I can't remember how much this gap would cost, the 7.5 to 8 miles. But it's fairly expensive and it's fairly drawn out in the timeline. So, one of the things that I proposed is, as we're, trying to figure out this inland rail trail piece of Oceanside, because that's the piece that hasn't been done. Vista has a little piece that hasn't been done. That perhaps there's a way to connect the inland rail trail that ends in Vista, where Beaubier turns into Oceanside Boulevard, and there's North Melrose as a intersection. It's actually really close to Guahomie Park, which is county. And we could theoretically be able to connect to the San Luis Rey separated bike trail if we could just connect the inland rail trail piece from Vista to Guahomie Park, which is actually not very far. And North Melrose intersects further down to North Santa Fe. And there's, in my opinion, there's plenty of room to create a separated bike lane. So we can maybe have a faster connection to the ocean. Because I think the inland rail trail portion, if I can remember correctly, I mean, it's really set off way into the future, and they're trying to figure out where in Oceanside they're going to do it. Are they going to keep the current plans? Are they actually going to convert to Oceanside Boulevard? We all know that, these projects, they take a long time. I think the inland rail trail has been like 25 years plus in the making. So the sooner we can connect the inland rail trail to the San Luis Rey rail trail, I think that would be a smaller funding opportunity and a quicker timeline. So I did offer that to Caltrans to look at, and I would offer that to you all. Maybe we can champion that as we're trying to figure out the Oceanside piece. I really appreciate showing, that where the CMCP has identified certain opportunities. For those who haven't seen the North County CMCP, it's going to be a critical document that goes out to 2050, and it kind of outlines different projects here in North County. I will say that I'm not satisfied with the amount of non-single occupancy vehicle projections, because going out to 2050, we're looking at 5% only, and we're at like 1%. So seeing that like 70% of the trips that start in North County end in North County, and they're 10 miles or less, and 50% of the trips are 5 miles or less. I really think that with active transportation improvements and with improving our public transit system, that we could actually grow that mode share a lot more. At the county, the Buena Creek station is the only station, transit station that they have in their purview. So I'm really glad that there's a lot of focus on that. In San Marcos, being on the Sprinter, it's great to see the inland rail trail and how many people use it. So being able to have some improvements there, and the grade separation is going to be important. And then I already talked about Nordal, but I wanted to ask about the inland rail trail improvements in Escondido. I heard like water bottle filling station. So would that be along the rail trail, and is that going to be in conjunction with maybe like creating a shaded corridor, because we know Escondido gets super hot and the climate crisis, right, is just continuing to grow exponentially. And it doesn't just mean that it gets hotter. It also means that we have these crazy, bless you, these crazy droughts followed by extreme, rain, followed by heat, followed by really cold. So I'm curious what some of those improvements would look like on the inland rail trail. Because I used to work off of Auto Parkway, and I actually, with my boss, we went on a run, and it was really hot to run on that rail trail. But it's a great asset. So if we can enhance it, that's awesome.
Yes, so the city has indicated exactly those points. Right now, there's not a lot of shade, so it's not as pleasant to walk through. But through creating really well-marked trailheads, really lovely tree canopies, the water bottles are really key because it gets very hot. Additional trail security, making sure that it's safer to walk, bike, all of those amenities, as well as bus shelters. They'd like to see bus shelters along that pathway so that they can use that. People can get off the bus, walk short distances, and be able to connect to their final destinations.
Awesome. That's great. And for those who aren't aware, Sandag also has funding for a study on what would be our first bus rapid transit here in North County. It's huge, and it would be in Escondido, and it would connect the Nordal station to Palomar Health to the transit station. So transit center. So that's really cool. And if we could, have those improvements, bus shelters are absolutely necessary. The last thing that I want to say is, when do we anticipate to see a list of costs for these specific items?
So right now, this is very conceptual. Some costs are actually available now, depending on how far the project has progressed. One example is the Oceanside Inland Rail Trail. They applied for almost $500,000 in Caltrans Sustainable Communities funding in order to study those feasibility alignments. So potentially that option that you've mentioned. I think I don't have a clear answer for you in terms of costs, again, because of that. But the costs that we do have available, I'll be reporting today. I can continue working with the cities to seek what information that they have. Some of the cost information that we have, particularly on the grade separation, is very dated. And it does take a lot of money to be able to do that kind of initial evaluation.
In ballpark figure, how much does a grade separation usually cost? I mean, it's like multiple millions, right?
So I believe Jill Bankston for the city of Encinitas previously represented that the El Portal undercrossing was, I believe, 13 million.
And that was a small one compared to some of these other separations that we're looking at, right? So multiply that times a lot. So we definitely need to be able to get some of this federal and state money to be able to make this happen. So thank you so much. Any other questions, comments? Yes.
Another question. Is there a date as to when the items are supposed to be submitted for the grant money? And then the second part of that is then when do we hear back?
So yes, notices of funding availability are constantly being released by the feds, particularly with respect to the money that's now available through the BIL or the infra bill. I believe Mary has that information, but the notices each have deadlines. The federal grade crossing elimination grant was due last November. We still have not heard. So it's very difficult to tell how long it takes for the feds to get back to us in terms of the applications that are submitted. I know that with respect to the Caltrans grant that was submitted by Oceanside, they're supposed to hear back later this summer. So maybe states respond a little bit quicker, but I don't have clear dates for everything that's submitted. I think that's part of the strategy here, that as these grants are coming available, we're making sure to based on this priority list, let the cities know there's this grant that's coming. Do you want to partner? If you'd like to partner, we're happy to work with you. And then submit timely applications. And then the question is, if we do get the money, then we need to enter into that MOU so that we can progress the projects forward.
And some of these projects are many years. Some have been decades, I think. So those costs escalate. So is there something built into the funds received as far as an escalation cost? Or no?
So we typically
It's
use
pretty
an,
much gonna be over budget from the start, otherwise.
so we typically use an escalator. So we'll use, if something was escalated in 20 or estimated in 2020, when we go to construction, we'll escalate it based on the
Is that like
current estimate.
CCI?
Yes. But I think the idea is that in order to get funding for these projects, we need to move them along. And if we're very serious about implementing them, the only way to be competitive for these grant fundings now is to start the process now. Because most of these grants will be available for a cycle of potentially 5 years.
Okay. Thanks.
Great questions. My last one actually just came up. So, I know I promised my last one was a while ago, but this is my last one for this one. So do we anticipate that this committee will remain like alive, right? Until we go through this whole process, which could be maybe a few years in the making, or when do we anticipate the conclusion of this particular committee?
So the Rail Safety and Community Enhancement Committee is a limited term specific purpose committee. And the primary purpose was to really just wrap our arms around what are the priorities, what is NCTD going to commit to working with the cities to move forward with, because the money is available now and we want to partner to make these things happen so that the rail corridor is not just a transportation corridor, but also an amenity for the communities that we're serving. I think the anticipation is that once the priorities have been set and agreed to by the committee, that we would adjourn in June based upon the work plan that was approved. To the extent that this committee believes that additional meetings are needed, I'm happy to propose an extension to that work plan.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much. Believe it or not, no vote is required for this item. It is informational only. So our next and last item on our agenda will be a similar presentation to item 1, but we'll focus on the priority projects along the coastal corridor. NCTD has also worked with the coastal communities to identify priority projects that will benefit the community. Lillian will continue the presentation on this item. We're all yours again.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Suhail. So just to revisit the purpose of the committee, it's this idea that we will improve the rail corridor safety, improve communities, look at local goals and objectives, and also leverage the historic funding that's available. Next slide. Beginning with the projects that we've already heard, I just want to revisit those types of projects. So we've heard presentations on grade crossings, trenching, quiet zones, fencing, landscaping, trails, wayside horns, and parking. These are the types of projects we have historically heard from our cities and the county, and the things that we are continuing to evaluate as we move forward. Next slide. Starting again with the city of Oceanside, they have identified along the coastal corridor. So Oceanside is the only city that has both the coaster and sprinter rail corridors that connect. They have identified a grade separation project by the Oceanside Harbor, which would replace the vehicular and pedestrian tunnel. This feature is a bid alternative to the Eastbrook to Shell bridge repair and double tracking project, which is a Sandag led project. It has currently received 27 million from the FRA. And there are pending grant applications for local partnership program grants. This project, as I mentioned, also includes a city propounded feature, which is currently in the permitting phase. The city is in need of 5 to 7 million in order to construct this grade separation feature as part of the Eastbrook to Shell project. Additionally, the city is prioritizing the coastal rail trail in a 2-phase approach, beginning with its top priority segment north from Moore Street to Oceanside Boulevard. The Coastal Rail Trail is already complete from Oceanside Boulevard to the transit station. Current estimates for the design and construction of this priority piece of the Coastal Rail Trail is over 14 million. The city has previously funded and completed a project study to determine alignments, and an environmental impact report for this project segment is complete. The city is intending to fund design of the project to make the project shovel-ready. The city's third priority is a 3,500-foot segment of trail northward from the Lagoon and Nature Center to Moore Street. The city received a Caltrans Sustainable Communities grant for $308,000 to prepare a feasibility study to widen the Coastal Rail Trail from Moore Street to Eaton Street to connect to the Coastal Rail Trail in Carlsbad. The study is expected to be completed by February 2025. In this slide, we see here the lovely existing completed Coastal Rail Trail, and the square that I've identified is the terminus of the Coastal Rail Trail that would then need to be extended. Next slide. In the city of Carlsbad, their top priority is the Carlsbad Village Trench, a grade separation project that would go throughout the village. A study was previously completed at a very high level that considered two options, a shorter trench option and a longer trench. The city's priority is the longer trench option, with the typical trench section depicted here. Additionally, the city of Carlsbad, like its neighbor to the north, has similarly identified a priority to extend the Coastal Rail Trail and to close gaps to its current alignment. The remaining gaps of the Coastal Rail Trail include segments along the southern border to Avenida Encinas and from Avenida Encinas northward past Poinsettia Lane and the North County Transit District Poinsettia Station. The city would be open and interested in participating in a multi-city design study effort to continue the trail that has a similar design to the Coastal Rail Trail that was completed in Cardiff. The city of Carlsbad is also actively seeking to engage in two options for rideshare program implementation. They're working with the city of Oceanside to implement a neighborhood electric vehicle shuttle service similar to what was included here in the city of Oceanside. And the city is in discussions with both Sandag and the city to look for opportunities to make that happen. Additionally, the city is in the process of studying potential options for an impact fee program. This fee program would be implemented as part of development costs and fund an all-electric on-demand rideshare program. Next slide, please. The city of Encinitas has committed to moving forward and completed initial public meetings and conceptual designs on two at-grade rail crossings in the Leucadia area, the northwest section of the city. These two crossings are at Grandview Street and Glaucus Street and would accommodate both pedestrian and cyclist traffic. A conceptual image of a potential crossing is depicted here. Additionally, the city has an MOU with NCTD to leverage NCT's on-call bench to develop and design a quiet zone. This quiet zone proposed would extend the existing quiet zone at Chesterfield throughout the city and end at the city of Carlsbad at Cannon Road on the north end. Funding for this study and to move forward this fiscal year will be going to the Encinitas City Council this week. The final priority for the city of Encinitas is construction funding for the Coastal Rail Trail. Sandag has completed design of the Coastal Rail Trail design northward from the Cardiff Coastal Rail Trail piece to East E Street, They are currently looking for construction funding opportunities in collaboration with Sandag. Next slide. In the city of Solana Beach, they have identified slightly different projects, specifically electric vehicle charging stations at the Solana Beach Transit Station. They want to highlight that they don't want to lose any parking, but that the addition of the EV capacity would certainly benefit riders. The next priority identified by the city is a project that's not in the city limits. It's a project that's important to NCTD and near and dear to our hearts as well, and is the San Diego Fairgrounds platform. They see a benefit from the completion of this critical project and accordingly have prioritized it as it will create efficiencies for transit riders and reduce traffic in the city of Solana Beach. The last project they have identified is improvements to an existing drainage basin. At the existing location, There is a detention area that when it rains, it frequently fills up. Manually, it is required to drain. Through improvements to drainage, this will assist pedestrians that are utilizing the underpass, which on occasion does flood and makes it difficult to pass during large rain events. Next slide, please. In the city of Del Mar, they have prioritized the rail realignment study that is being led by Sandag, as well as the potential for coastal access and recreation improvements. A coastal connection study was presented to the public for a public comment period through the end of January of this year. And they are looking to finalize and bring back the final options of the coastal connection study to the Del Mar City Council in April of this year. They would then like to move forward with the potential to design and construct some of the coastal access opportunities that they've described here. The last project, no surprise, is the San Diego and Fairgrounds platform. Similarly, a key priority for the city of Del Mar. And this project component is part of the larger double tracking effort, which we, NCTD, is actively seeking funds for. Grant applications have been submitted to the TIRCP program, and an application is in the works for the Federal State Partnership Program. In addition to providing rail resiliency and operational flexibility, this key project will also provide a pedestrian undercrossing to connect the coastal rail trail to the beach. Next slide, please. Finally, we have the city of San Diego. They have identified the Washington Street improvements. This crossing is about 2 miles northwest of downtown San Diego. It is on Washington Street between overpasses of Interstate 5 and the Pacific Highway. There are signalized intersections on each side of the crossing, and there are 4 tracks at this crossing with 2 Metropolitan Transit System San Diego Trolley Light Rail Transit tracks and 2 NCTD mainline tracks. Improvements are recommended to this area to improve circulation and safety. Potential options include additional pavement markings, gates, fencing, and modifications to existing infrastructure. The last priority identified by the city is in the Sorrento Valley area. While this has been reviewed as part of our Phase 5 signal improvement project, it is not yet funded and could include such components as removal of the third unused track, installation of pedestrian sidewalk, roadway improvements, as well as signal improvements. This project would reduce gate downtime and improve vehicular mobility. Next slide. With that, that concludes my prioritization projects presentation for the coaster and the San Diego subdivision. I'm available for any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Stellar job as usual. And I would ask if we have any public comments, but I know we do because I have them right here in my hand. So first up is Emily. Is it Molly?
It looks like
Okay. Thank you. Come on down.
Ms. Moaning, you have 3 minutes.
Oh, goodness. All right. Hello, respected committee members of the Rail Safety and Community Enhancement Committees. My name is Emily Manning, and I'm a resident of Carlsbad, residing at 3305 Lincoln Street in Carlsbad Village. I'm here today to ask this committee to advance a quiet zone in Carlsbad. A quiet zone is critical to the lives of both current and future Carlsbad residents. As residents of Carlsbad, whose home is located very close to the rail, it must be recognized that a quiet zone is needed to reduce this noise. A quiet zone is fundamental to the health of its citizens that live near the rail tracks. It's also important for all residents and visitors that come to Carlsbad who find themselves near the rail. Furthermore, when looking toward the future, it is understood that our city, like most other cities, is facing a shortage of housing. When entertaining the option of building residential units along mass transit, it is imperative to provide a safe and quiet environment for its residents. Residents of future planned housing projects near the rail should be ensured that their daily lives will not be negatively impacted by this noise. A quiet zone would address such noise. We must plan in a manner that is conducive to making living near the rail healthy and desirable. Councilmember Luna, I am specifically requesting that all efforts are made to advance a quiet zone in Carlsbad for this budget cycle. It will never be more affordable than it is now, and joining with the regional effort to quiet train horns will be quicker and more economical. Thank you for the time and for the short moment to speak.
Thank you very much. We also have another speaker here, Diana Nunez. Please come on down.
Ms. Nunez, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. My name's Diana Nunez, and I'm a resident of Encinitas. Thank you all for your work on providing regional solutions pertaining to the rail. As planned residential density along the rail and rail traffic increases, it's imperative that the rail corridor not only be safe, but a good neighbor. As a longtime resident of Leucadia, proximal to the rail, I am aware of the daily impacts of the rail on its residents and community. Train noise and safety need to be addressed. I'm asking that Vice Chair Hensey and the other respected members of this committee support the development and realization of a regional quiet zone. The time is right, and this rare opportunity to access funding in a collaborative and cost-effective, project-effective manner should be exercised. A regional approach can bring forth a synergistic solution that would be optimal in providing and addressing the needs of many communities along the rail. Please support the development of a quiet zone. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. Suhail, do we have any remaining public comments?
No, Madam Chair.
All right, at this time, we are ending public registration to speak on this item. And I will say, I don't know if we've ever had, because I don't know about the respective cities, but here at NCTD, we've had like so many different presentations on quiet zone and all the steps that need to be taken in order to get there. Is that something that we've, as NCTD, have presented to other cities or done workshops on?
Over the course of my 14 plus years, we've had different discussions when communities were considering and made presentations, giving different information to people. And I think you recall that, years ago, we put forth pretty much the same package of money that we hoped that the cities would match to leverage to complete the studies. And, there was insufficient interest to do it. So this time around, it's been an issue that has been more at the top of mind for communities. And so now people are, and we've agreed to fund this initial study. So it is something that has been discussed over time.
And just real quick is, so for members of the public that are interested in seeing this come to fruition, is there anything on our website that kind of shows where we're at?
Yeah, there is information, but
Besides going into the documents and being a nerd about it.
There's information on our website about how to do these projects. But I think just for clarity for everyone too, we've taken the step forward to provide the information to cities and communities about leveraging to get project efficiencies and reduce costs and actually deliver projects cheaper, faster, better, in my perspective. At the end of the day, determination of a quiet zone is a local responsibility. And that is going to be something key. The next steps is which cities are going to commit towards the next steps. And we stand ready to help them, but it does transition more to a city perspective to advance projects.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited because we have a very, the members of NCTD at this point are extremely active in trying to move some of these projects forward. And I know I've learned a lot about quiet zones because of the activity from the current members of NCTD. So are there any questions from the board? Okay, we'll start here.
Yeah, mine is mainly a comment to my colleague here today, Councilmember Luna. I'm so glad that you're here and that we're able to have this conversation and that you can hear from some of the speakers of both of our cities, because really Carlsbad and Encinitas are a little linked in the need for a quiet zone, in that there's this obscure requirement that for Encinitas to go forward, part of Carlsbad would have to go forward. And so what I'm really hoping for, and I think you heard from the speakers, is that within this next budget cycle, Carlsbad will do what Encinitas has done and put a little bit of money towards furthering this goal to study what's needed for the next phase of your quiet zone. And I think it's a really perfect time to do it because NCTD has embarked on a regional study, which is something that Carlsbad won't have to pay for. So Encinitas did it, we had to pay for it. You won't have to pay for it because NCTD is doing that, which is really wonderful and kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity for us. And also yeah, you might not be there for a long time, but it will be a good time. We can assure you of that. But also, as was mentioned by the Carlsbad speaker, with the housing that we're advancing in Carlsbad as an agency to keep that quiet as we increase frequency along the rail, I think will be so important in the success of this housing here and the value that housing can hold. And I don't think that you have to choose, trenching or quiet zone. I think you can advance this quiet zone and then have quieted horns and kind of avoid some of the tumult that Encinitas has been going through in recent years with all the noise and all the activity. The additional cost savings that is exciting and sort of a little detail here, but it's that Encinitas has this MOU with NCTD, so we can actually use NCTD service in-house to help us advance that next phase. And I imagine that would also be available to Carlsbad should they put some money forward to say, yes, we want to do this as well.
Yeah, so and ideally is we would like to have a similar MOU with the city of Carlsbad as what we have with the city of Encinitas. Because if we can get a collaboration memo going, MOU, I don't know why I keep thinking about memos today. That would be most helpful in terms of keeping this thing on the track moving concurrently.
And we learned that was really helpful for us as a city because instead of having to hire a consultant who would then be checking in with NCTD, it's kind of like NCTD already has those relationships and there doesn't need to be a third party involved in all that. So it's streamlined, it's cheaper, and it just makes more sense.
So of course I have to ask, what kind of cost are we talking about here?
I can get you that information. I don't have it off the top of my head. I can get you the information. Oh, I see Tracy Foster. She's moving forward to save the executive director.
We had looked at the costs already. The cost for Encinitas was roughly 650,000 that they were putting forward for as part of this MOU, and initially contemplated an additional 150,000 from City of Carlsbad to include the cannon. Mhm.
So just to be clear, Carlsbad's contribution would need to be an additional 150,000 or in addition to 650,000.
Well, I think before we get into too much of that detail, we need to go back and look at the different line items. Because I don't know, and maybe you do, Tracy, in terms of, was the 650 for a project completion or just for the design?
Just for the design. It's only, this MOU is just for the design. And in order for it to include the Carlsbad crossing, it would be that additional 150 on top of the 600 from the city of Encinitas.
Thank you.
And those are estimated costs. I just want to throw that out there because we haven't procured that, but it was just based on independent cost estimates that we performed.
And you're good.
Well, I just say this in every room that I possibly can, but Encinitas is really focused on continuing the rail trail not only through East Street and downtown Encinitas, but through the length of our city all the way through La Costa Avenue.
I have a question about the quiet zones. I believe we just had a presentation a few meetings ago about that. So I just want to be clear, the money you're talking about is study only. And then there's additional costs. And it seems to me it was very expensive and very long-term. Wasn't one of them, I forget how, because North County Transit doesn't just approve them, it's approved at a different level. This
Public
is not
utility.
something that North County Transit can
Yeah,
approve.
CPUC, FRA approvals on it. Each quiet zone stands unto itself, and it's one of the reasons why we encourage the programmatic approach to it, because there's a whole mathematical formula behind it. You also have to look at, there are going to be some locations that may be advantaged in terms of infrastructure improvements that already have occurred, kind of pre-plumbing that could be there towards the construction. So I wouldn't use the term expensive or not expensive. I think you have to look at each of those projects and the infrastructure at each of them. And I know Carlsbad, in terms of our signal optimization, that's a pretty big improvements that we're going to be making in Carlsbad to modernize that. And that's within the scope of what NCTD is funding. And this again will also, if you're jumping into the study with us now, gives us the opportunity to understand what may be efficient for us as we're advancing our project that could reduce your costs. Because, you know, the worst thing for you to do is for us to go in and have an opportunity where we could do something and we don't do that when we're there. So it's all relative to the value that one will receive from a community perspective.
I have another question, Matt. So we talked about this briefly before you came in. So we have all these projects, proposed projects. Somebody's going to decide how to move them forward, or which ones can move forward, and look for the money. What sort of time frame are we looking at for any of these to be approved and started?
Well, so each of these projects, if you go through the whole compendium of the presentation, stand into themselves. So like if you're working on a rail trail project in your community, to the degree you're not, asking NCTD for use or property, or maybe you are asking, but that pretty much has a path pretty much independent of NCTD by and large. The board has a policy already in place that supports the use of right of way should it be available that we don't need for these kinds of activities. So you have to look at each of these quiet zones. So that has its own approach and path. Are you going crossing by crossing, or you going programmatic? Where does it fit within the city's budget? Is the city willing to prioritize and advance it? So if everybody says they want to do everything, then great, everything's going to go forward. Certain projects that may be tied to other projects that NCTD is doing, maybe we would be working and collaborating with the cities to see if we could share cost to benefits of doing a project. Or in the case like a grade separation, pedestrian separation project, we may work with the city of Encinitas or a community to put in a grant application from a safety perspective on a project. So all of these things can move together. It's not anticipated that most of these projects are directly funded by NCTD because pursuant to the board policy, they're local enhancement projects. But again, I think the perspective is if we can find a grant program and match it up with the infrastructure project and include that as part of it, that's the way you go to leverage cost and benefit.
So do you also look at how these might work together in that looking at well, take the Nordal situation. You've got Escondido fire, you've got, I've seen, well, North County fire, Valley Center, or whatever that department is. I've seen Vista go over there. I've seen, even Carlsbad fire cross that track at times. Do you look at these as far as where you're going to, is that something you would jointly approach because it affects so many cities and entities?
Yes. So,
I guess Caltrans would even be involved.
Oh, yeah.
right?
So it's like on some of the Sprinter Corridor projects where we're already trying and working with the county to support potential road improvements and support future housing growth and development. So the key is to the degree that you can find partners and you can leverage costs and benefits across a broader platform and leverage that into a grant that even shows broader benefits, you definitely want to do it. So that's kind of the key piece of this is to get us all on the same page. To, you know, to the degree of the project is of interest to a community that, and NCTD has a project that offers the opportunity for all of us to share cost and benefits of an integrated project. So that's the key piece is some of these things you maybe can look at a project and go like, I'm embed it into a larger project. But at the end, everybody's going to have to contribute money to make these things happen because it ends up being local money is a part of the formula towards competing well for federal and state grants. You're welcome.
Other questions, comments? Yes.
I just have a quick question and please excuse my ignorance in some of these areas, but essentially the city of Encinitas, so by going forward with the MOU, and I know we're in such a litigious society, what is the liability impacts if the city was to assume, because I'm assuming it's under a different permit, it's not under NCTD anymore, it's under, you know, another jurisdiction. Have you gotten an opinion or anything?
That's a really good question, but probably not for me. All I would say is that I think there is an opportunity when you quiet the horns to make it the overall corridor safer by doing other enhancements. So for folks that are maybe audibly impaired, you can have visual signals, you can bring a whole safety package forward.
It's very, so that is going to be more of a question for your city attorney. But look, quiet zones are fairly a standard appliance now in railroad operations. And the process that goes through to support approval is a pretty rigorous process in terms of mitigating safety, safety risk. But like most things that we do in life, if you move, there's risk. But that really is going to be a question for your legal department to work through. There's a framework around how all of these things get built, but the process has gotten even more rigorous in terms of the safety analysis that you have to do prior to getting a quiet zone approved.
Any other questions, comments? All right, back to me. So yeah, with the quiet zone, I'm not aware, moving back to the 78 corridor real quick, I'm not aware of any cities that have an MOU with you on the Sprinter line, right? We haven't moved forward on.
No.
Okay. So that will be good for us to bring back to our cities. And what I remember also from the presentation is that you may have a plan for a quiet zone, but if you're not actually doing everything to the best effort in that plan, they will remove the quiet zone from you and you may lose it forever. So it seems like, with the projects that we have, whether it's on the coaster side or on the Sprinter side, where we are looking at doing enhancements like grade separations and pedestrian cyclist crossings, that would make us even more competitive for being able to move forward with the quiet zone, was like my simple understanding of the overall process. So this committee has been great to be able to have these types of discussions. I want to ask a question regarding the Carlsbad asks, and it's number 3, the rideshare program implementation of neighborhood electric vehicles. What would be the footprint of the neighborhood electric vehicle, like where it's actually going to go? Because I know that they're quote unquote street legal here in California, low speed vehicles, neighborhood electric vehicles, as long as the posted speed limit is 35 miles per hour or less, because they only go up to like 25 miles per hour. And I don't think they're putting NOS in it to get an extra little spark in there. So I just know that when I'm looking at Carlsbad, especially from the perspective of Vista, there's a lot of flow and San Marcos along Palomar Airport Road. But that's like a freeway for speeds. So to me, like being able to connect Palomar Airport Road, because there's so much industry along that area, could be a critical factor for increased mobility. But there would have to be a significant reduction in the speed limits in order to do that. So I'm just kind of curious what Carlsbad is looking at.
And maybe Lillian, you know the details because that is a city plan.
Yes, so I spoke with Tom Frank last week. And I believe Suhail, is Tom on the Zoom, or is Nathan on? Yes.
Frank, you may speak now.
Good morning. Good morning. Can everybody hear me?
Good morning. We can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that question, Chair. My name's Tom Frank. I'm the Transportation Director and City Engineer for the City of Carlsbad. And so actually, we're looking at twofold. One is in our mobility element of our general plan, it asks us to look at innovative solutions for moving people through our city, not just in cars, but through all different modes. So to help with our transportation demand management issue, as we're developing our city, we're looking at flexible fleet options. So there's actually two types of programs we're considering. One is the electric neighborhood electric vehicle shuttle type of a system, like the city of Oceanside has successfully implemented, and also the city of San Diego has successfully implemented and then just extended their program. So we're looking at what that boundary would be somewhere in our village area for that type of a shuttle system. In addition, a really great program that we're considering and we're actually studying as a part of our multimodal transportation improvement fee program is a rideshare program throughout the city. And what that really addresses, besides just creating a really flexible, clean alternative to driving, it would be a pooled option. It actually addresses two major focuses for both NCTD and Sandag as a whole. It addresses the equity issue, and it addresses our climate action plan goals as well. From the equity issue, there's a lot of our city that is actually transit desert. The citizens don't have the opportunity. They're a half a mile or greater away from the nearest route. So this would be a rideshare program, and it would be a pooled electric rideshare program, and it would be very similar to a rideshare program like the city of San Clemente has established, and it's really successful for that city. So we're just in the study phase, but the perimeter, it's set by a geofence. So you could really establish the perimeter, whether it be through a mobile hub area, or it could be a perimeter as large as all of Carlsbad or the Palomar Airport mobility hub geofenced area, or it could be the entire county. So there's just endless opportunities with this sort of a program. We've also commented on Sandag's regional plan, where there's great opportunity for improving such a program along the major regional arterials. So hopefully that gives you a concept of what we're studying, and I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's very helpful. And yeah, anything that we can do to create a better plan for more folks to enter into different choices for mobility, especially because in North County, we do have a lot of transit deserts, unfortunately. Not everybody can drive, and not everybody wants to be forced to drive every single time. Sometimes we want to mix it up and be able to walk, bike, or take a different type of mode, like public transit or ride sharing or these neighborhood electric vehicles. So I really appreciate that. And I really do see Palomar Airport Road as such a critical connector for employment between San Marcos, Vista, and Carlsbad. So thank you so much. Are there any other? Yes.
I have one more. These grant funds, I just want to be clear, these are one-time funds for capital costs, correct? So if it's a program, like in my mind, maybe I'm wrong, a rideshare program would have ongoing costs. This would help to create the program and then somebody's going to take it over after it's created.
Well, just assume this is something that the city is working on.
Okay.
And so it's not really something, in our budget at all. We should be coming, we should be coming in April to the board with our microtransit app software, request for board approval. And that will require, once we implement it, a dedicated source of funding to operate that service. So I can't speak to the city. As the city moves forward with it, they would have to fund the operating and the capital, but in no shape or form does that really impact anything that we're doing as part of this committee, because there's no grant source that we would be seeking for that app.
Okay,
for
but
them.
this is all geared for one-time grant capital.
Absolutely.
improvements Typically.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Only.
Yeah. One time
Okay.
or multiple grants around a bigger set of projects.
Okay.
But yes, capital is what we would be focused in on this.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Awesome. Yeah. So I think altogether, it makes our communities in different neighborhoods much more connected. And that's something that we need now. But obviously this takes time. So I really look forward to seeing these come to fruition and providing folks with more opportunity to connect to different resources, including recreation, because we have a lot of folks that can't easily get to the beach and want to go to the beach and maybe need to get that relief, especially when it gets really hot. And all right, so this is just an informational item, so there's no vote required for this item. And the next scheduled meetings are the strategic workshop, April 6th at 2 p.m., regular board meeting, April 20th at 2 p.m., Marketing, Service Planning, and Business Development Committee meeting, April 24th at 1 p.m., and another Rail Safety and Community Enhancement Committee meeting, April 25th. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you all so much. And for the public, please, we don't get a lot of public comments, so bring all your questions and comments to NCTD. We want to hear from you. Thank you.